Welcome to Don't Fuck This Up, the podcast answering the ultimate question, how the fuck did you land that cool job? I'm your host, Lauren Alvarez. Hello and welcome to Don't Fuck This Up. This week's guest is a founder with a multi-million-dollar invention portfolio. If you hate washing your hair every day, she's your number one hero, and her track record proves she's pretty unfuckable. It's the CEO, founder, and inventor of Shhhowercap, Jacquelyn De Jesu. Jacquelyn, welcome to Don't Fuck This Up.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I think it's so cool. Like, I love that when even in your notes coming over, I was like, how do you want to be introduced? And you're like, I don't know, an icon who created a category. I was like, yes, that is the energy that we should all be bringing into our interviews, our conversations, and just our days in general.
Thanks.
So thank you.
No, I appreciate it. It's nice to be at a stage in our growth story where like I can lead with my entire personality, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like, I think so often, I definitely want to talk about this, I think, especially as women, but I think we're kind of taught to like dim ourselves or to hold back or to be like, ooh, is this acceptable? Or like, is this going to make me liked? And when you can get to that stage of like liberation revenue, honestly, like there's certain things you have to accomplish to be able to be like, I'm going to fully embrace exactly where I'm at and who I am. And I think when you get to show up that way, then you also continue to attract the right people who you want to buy your shit.
And I think you and I spoke about this. We have very similar backgrounds, but if you ask anybody that I worked with at my first junior AD job, like I was the same person. So I think what was really interesting was when I launched and I needed to not be that thing, and the years that it took for me to be comfortable being that thing again, which is exactly 100% everything that I am and nothing besides that, you know? People call it authenticity, but that's such a played out word.
It is. I mean, I think it's just like, are you real? Are you fake? Check one or the other. Go left, go right. Thank you. Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, so a recent post of yours, I mean, you wrapped like such a busy month, season, quarter. I don't even know. Like, it's been a busy 2024. You've shot out of a cannon. You're here. Yeah. I'm glad we could even get time together for this because I know that you're running 100 miles an hour and I love that. I live that way. Before we get into all that, how are you doing? For real? How are you doing?
Not great. The reality is that the past couple of years of my entrepreneurial journey have been really, really impacted by some pretty offensive competitive behavior. And now I'm the phoenix rising from the ashes, and that's a hard earned right. But I'm running as fast as I can and just like taking every opportunity that's always existed for this brand because there have been so many years where we weren't able to, not because of anyone's efforts other than ours, you know?
Yeah. And I think like, you know, it's funny because I'm not kissing ass. I actually am the proud owner of 2 shower caps, one of which I bought like 6 years ago. I am a woman who hates washing my hair. I have always been this way. And I was double processed blonde for a long time. So like that's a great permission to not have to wash your hair. I was using dry shampoo when it was first created. I worked in editorial back in the day. And like I hate washing my hair. And I also believe you can train your hair to not have to wash it all the time when you stop washing your hair every day. But I will say that, yes, shower cap was honestly, to me, a necessity that I could never find. I was always getting like, you know, the Nana. We've all seen like the hideous shower caps that leave the horrible ring impression on your forehead. And like, or I was like tying my hair up in a really intricate way and still getting it wet. And nothing pisses me off more than getting my hair wet, honestly. Like if I'm not trying to wash my hair, it is the worst feeling. So I just want to say like, thank you. I mean, I'm such a fan.
Thank you. No, that means the world to me, honestly. Like, it's what's brought all of the blessings, and it's also what's brought the curse, right? Like I did create a category with this patented invention. It is a better product. It is a better mousetrap, right? And it's something that everyone needed and no one had until I created it. So that's not cockiness. Like it is just like, it's what gets me out of bed. The fact that people feel the way that you just played back people do. And like, it's so much of what's carried us through the years is that love and like that genuine love and the recognition that it it wasn't available. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
totally.
that is what carries the brand. That's what's carried our sell through at retailers, even when I'm not the one pitching it. And that's really that brand magic that like you can't buy, you can't
Mm,
pay for, you can't raise for, like you can't out invent, you know, like we created something
yes.
that needed to exist and the world embraced it as such. And as, as much as I love what you just played back, I love even more that I hear it every day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you think
I
I'm
get
basic?
that, and I
No.
think about you naked.
I mean, yes and yes. That's, I mean, I wish everyone could have that
People,
blessing, right?
people come up to
That's
me at
amazing.
events. There's that what you just said, which is like thank you, which is like honestly like thank you for
Yes.
thank you for that. But then there's I thought about you naked this morning. That like the amount of times that I've heard that from women, from men, like just because my thing is in their showers, it's such an
Yeah.
interesting interaction in a professional setting, but it's also
Yes.
quite
Yeah. As an
ridiculous.
HR professional, I'm like hoping that this isn't something your employees say to you, but we'll leave that alone.
No,
We'll just
no,
put
it's
that
not
over there.
employees.
No.
It's not employees. It's random people at conferences typically,
Oh, yeah.
or
You're
like
like,
if I
thank
meet
you,
them for the first
Sandra.
time off, or Bob.
That's what I
You know,
wanted. Yeah, thanks, Bob. I really wanted to hear that from you. Oh my God. People just no filter. I also loved like when I was like, reading a little bit about kind of what led you to this. And I'd love to hear in your words, but I love that you called out that shit's like so ugly out there before you created Shower Cap. It was like fucking crystals and like ruffles and giant bows. Like, I don't want to look like a giant baby when I'm getting in the shower. I want to feel otherwise like amazing and sexy and
yeah,
powerful, like I always feel. But like, yeah, some tacky ass medallion on on my head is not going to make me feel amazing. So I really
no.
appreciated just that you shared that. But is there anything else? I mean, when you were creating this category, was it literally just like you wanted this thing and you couldn't find it? Was there something else that you were like, when did the I guess when did the light go off that you were like, this is a fucking business opportunity?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I was working in advertising for almost 10
Yeah.
years. I had risen to kind of the ACD level, but I was always pitching really big pieces of business. And I was very lucky to have those types of opportunities really early in my career. So I was head to head with CMOs and like the highest level of brand thought leadership, not only on the agency side, but on the client side. And I'm the daughter of a hairdresser and a professional makeup artist, and my dad is a set builder. I
Wow.
wish that made me a nepo baby, but really it just like gave me a SAG card because I was cute on set all the time when I was an only child. Um, but but very really um, the daughter of two creative entrepreneurs, right?
Mm.
And they were successful enough to have a family. There were certain months that were harder than others, but they were very much in the gig economy, right?
Yeah.
And I was raised that creativity is a superpower and that it's something that not everyone has. And if you hone it, you can do really big things with it, right? But when
Yeah.
I went to go look for my first step forward, right, in my collegiate career, um, I always I always tell this story. I mean, I don't know what your listenership is, but and tell me if I'm rambling, you can cut it out. But my dad brought home a one club annual
Damn.
that I think he bought for like 50 cents at the library. And I hadn't picked a major yet. I hadn't picked a college, but I knew that like advertising was it. I was fascinated by the fact that you could win an award from for like a print campaign that had no language on it, but it
Oh,
communicated
yes.
everything. And I just read it cover to cover and I became obsessed with how visuals and tone and all of these kind of subliminal things actually create a feeling, right? And that feeling makes you either want to purchase a product or not, right?
Right.
Incorporate something into your routine or not, change your behavior or not, convert from one thing to another or not, right? And mainly I was like, I want to make money creatively. I want a
Mm.
401k, I want a salary, like I want a career to rise into with these skills that my parents have literally like ran back and forth to pro paint every weekend for 18 years, you know,
Yeah, totally.
owning. And so it's a combination of all of those things, but really I wound up in advertising. I was working, I had a pretty lucrative career. I had a really good reputation. I was known for kind of like, I realize this now actually after leaving the industry and how people play back to me my shower cap story. But what I was known for, especially when I was a freelancer, was like she'll crack the brief in a very simple, big way. Does that make sense? Like that was
Fuck yeah, that
my
makes
art
sense.
direction, creative kind of reputation. So that tracks back to like my senior thesis. I did a campaign about herpes where it was just like a very simple red dot all over my college campus, went up blind, you know. But
Yeah.
then it was what drove a lot of my ideas and what would book me and what people would look for me for when I was working in advertising. And then honestly, I was just burning the candle at both ends, like classic
Yes.
ad kid. And I had to look a certain way when I was working on Olay. Like I
Yes.
couldn't just roll up with my hair in a top knot and like throw on a red lip. Like I had to look the part. It was Olay, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
was when I realized I just didn't have time to do all this hair. Like I just didn't have time for it. And I
Yeah.
went to go look for a shower cap because my mom told me I needed one. And I was like, oh, I must have one at home. And the first light bulb was that I didn't have one at home. I just assumed that I would have that staple, right? I grew up not washing my hair every day. I grew up using a shower cap. My mom's a hairdresser. I was educated. And I just like assumed that there would be one in any of the things of all of the beauty products that I had, like shoved somewhere. And there wasn't. In whatever moves, by the time I was in my late 20s, I just didn't have one available for what I needed it. And so that was like the assumption that I would have one and I didn't, right?
I love that.
And then
Yeah. That's so, it's
and then
actually
I
like, as you said that, it's so relatable. I was just thinking about like, oh yeah, like when you go for something and you're like, obviously I have this. And you're just like,
yeah,
wait, what? No. Yeah. I love that.
yeah, it's like
Keep
a
going.
commodity. Like
Sorry, I jumped in because I got
yeah.
so excited.
No, I'm glad the story resonates. And from there I went to the internet, as one does. I'm married to a pretty prolific branding graphic designer. We've been together since college. It'll be 17 years next year, or
Congrats.
in November of this year. Thanks. Married 8, but
Yeah.
together for 17. Um, and so I'm married to a designer and I was an art director, and like we choose the things in our house very intentionally. And a lot of that starts with best designed blank, right? Or most innovative whatever. Like those are the search terms that get me to the things that I want and need. It doesn't matter if it's an expensive item or a cheap item, it's just always the qualifier. And when I put that into in front of shower cap in 2013, I always say that it's not that nothing came up, it was what did. The
Mm.
internet told me that fashionable shower caps were bows and rosettes and like everything had that Miss Muffet shape. There were rhinestones, there were medallions, all of the things that you played back. And then there was this entirely separate category of like plastic animals and food, right? The
Oh my God.
strawberries, the frogs, the sharks, the ice cream cones. And like neither one of those things were the types of things that our demographic would be interested in, right?
Yeah.
The modern woman. And that was the insight that really got me, but that was the ad kid in me. There was no
Oh, I love
brands,
that.
right? There was no
Yeah.
brands. There was also no brand strategy for any of these wannabe brands. Like there were people that were selling things that were broken product experiences that no one really wanted, right? So the
Yeah.
modern woman was avoiding the category altogether. But meanwhile, we were all blowing through dry shampoo. We were all spending money at Dry Bar. We were all working our tushes off because it was before COVID and like there was no lax, right? And we were built different.
Totally.
But like all of those things were true, and then we were putting on the equivalent of granny panties, or quite often we were avoiding the category altogether and putting our hair up in top knots, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah. And then when you have bangs, you're totally fucked. Yeah.
yeah, but shower cap
Yeah.
fixed that too because the gripper,
It
have you
did.
ever pulled your bangs down? That's
Yeah.
my
It's
favorite hack.
amazing. It's
Yeah,
so,
you
it's
just pull your
so
bangs down
cool.
and let it sit behind. Um, So yeah, I mean, that's really what got me started was like, I went to this is going to date me. I went to my Adium list. Do you remember Adium?
Oh,
Adium?
yeah.
There's
I'm like
aggregated everything.
so dated together. Yeah. We
Yeah,
share a yearbook.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's fine. Exactly. It's fine. Um, I'm not an elder millennial, so I can hold on to that. But I went to my Adium because after that search result, I was like, oh my God, there's no brand. Like, I have to do this. I don't want to be the person that like claims they invented the post-it and then didn't. Like how has no one done this yet? You know?
Yes.
But mainly what it needed was my skills. It needed a brand. It needed a brand insight. It needed a visual aesthetic overhaul. It needed a repositioning. And like, that's what art directors do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm
1,000%.
uniquely poised to do this thing. But when I went to my Enneagram, I asked everybody that was online. It was like random girls that were 2 pledge classes underneath me from my sorority, like chicks from high school that I hadn't spoken to in years. And I just like anyone who was on, I was like, hey, random question. You may not even remember me. 1, do you wash your hair every day? Waited for the answer. 2, do you use a shower cap? And it was the fact that in that earliest snapshot of what we can call a loose focus group, that no one said that they were washing their hair every day. Not one person, not one girl that I asked that was online in that random smattering of people said that they washed their hair every day. And only
Yeah.
one person said that they actually used a shower cap actively. And I was like, that is the opportunity. That is the business opportunity. If I can crack this, it's $1 million invention overnight. Let alone did I know that it would be like a live wire the second I put the pre-order on the internet. But that's what
Yeah.
I get for being an overachiever.
I mean, yeah, just casually overachieving. I mean, yeah, because I mean, you sold out really quickly, right? So when you first launched, and I'm skipping ahead here, and we can talk about the creation process as much as you like. I mean, I'm just thinking about when
We
you're
should, because you know
launching.
who has no creation process? All the
Yeah.
knockoffs.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, when you're launching something, you're kind of putting your full self into it, right? Like you're pouring yourself
Yeah.
out. So even talking about like before we get into the launch part, how long did it take you where you were working 2 jobs at the same time? I mean, were you freelancing at this point? Were you still were you going into Olay? Like when did you kind of make the call that you're like, oh fuck, I need to like dedicate my time to this? Was it a revenue
Yeah.
threshold? Was it a, time thing? What was it for you? You were like, fuck no.
I wish it was a revenue threshold. Like I wish it was some sort of safety net that I had defined.
Yeah, don't we
My
all?
the way that I had managed it was like I had a really lucrative career, you know? I think I was
Yeah.
making 378 at the age of like
Hmm.
27. It's like
Yeah.
stupid.
That's amazing.
I heard that people don't even make, I mean, you worked in at Kid HR. Like
Yeah.
I heard that it's not even the same anymore.
No.
So there's not as much to miss, but I was very privileged in the career that I had built for myself by that time, gave me a little bit of discretionary income to kind of siphon things off. I had the idea and decided to leave my full-time job probably like 4 months later. But
Yeah.
I was planning as soon as I like had the light bulb moment, I was planning, lining up my recruiters and trying to like get back into the freelance zeitgeist. And then I
Yes.
freelanced, and that's what carried me the 2 years through development, because I would basically take a gig and then push on development, working those 2 jobs. But then at certain junctures where I wanted to give it my all, I would just say no for a little bit and do like a
Hmm.
full month straight sprint on Shhhowercap.
Yes.
And it was waffling, kind of not waffling, like strategically using the opportunities and the junctures of wherever I was in the timeline, that allowed me to get through. But I was in development for almost 2.5 years.
I mean, that's incredible too, because I think one thing I think it's often misunderstood about creatives is that, they struggle to focus, they struggle to dive in, or they're too focused. I've heard that too. But I actually think when you have that sort of tension between being like incredibly brand driven, incredibly creative, but then also you're able to see a vision that's much bigger than the immediate, and you're looking at something long term, that is that bigger strategy. That's actually like a very important piece of launching something, of making something come to fruition, of knowing that like you might throw 15 samples in the trash, and start over. But if you've ever worked on a campaign, you also know that like you could be like, we've got the thing, we nailed the brief, and then the client comes in and it's yep, it's it's over. Yeah, and I'm married to a creative as well, so like we live this in our household every day. And I
Yeah.
think that it is like it's part of like the heart goes into it, but the kind of confidence carries you through when it doesn't work out. I mean, talking about the development process, 2 years is no small animal. So what was it like for you kind of the first time that you held, your sample and you were like, holy shit, this is becoming real?
Honestly, it was terrifying. Like I knew how big it was about to be, and it was exciting, but it was also like, okay, now what? Like
Yeah, totally.
there's a slide transition in my keynote that's like, because I tell this story like on big stages and design conferences and stuff, but there's a slide that says I had one prototype and I needed like 100,000 more. It's
Yeah.
you could get it to one thing from a sample room, and then you're still like, okay, how do I make a tech pack? Like, what's a paper
Right.
pattern? Like, who's this contract manufacturer? What machines are they using? But through the development process, I was able to effectively learn a lot of those things, and then that
Yeah.
that really kind of put me on the path to who I was going to reach out to make this thing for real. And I think that's also just a really interesting story for entrepreneurs, which is I called so many factories because we wanted to make sure that we were made in the US, or at least cut and sewn in the US. And now we're printed, cut, sewn, assembled proudly in the US, which is just nice because none of them can
Fuck
claim that
yeah.
that I know of. Um,
Yeah.
the the thing that this factory owner told me after like a do-si-do of phone tag, he was like, I don't make shower caps. And I was like, well, neither do I. This is a waterproof turbine. Like, this isn't a shower cap. I can't go to the shower cap factories because the shower cap factories don't make this thing, right? Like that was
Yeah.
the rub, was like, he's like, I don't make shower caps. I don't make the category. And I was like, right, but you fundamentally have
Hmm.
the technical skills to make this waterproof head covering, right? And I
Yeah.
had to convince him
I think
to get
also
in.
like setting yourself apart. You're like, well, I haven't done this thing either. Also, like I'm creating a
Right.
category, right? You just said it without saying it, but you're creating a category. And so you're like, are you in or are you out?
Yeah. And then
You're just like staring each other
I was
down.
like, just do my first run. And I ordered 980 of them. And I had these boxes in my house for like 4 months while we were in pre-order. And we sold out, I think, in the first 10 days of the site going live as a solo
Yeah.
entrepreneur. And he was just like, okay, let's go. I believe you.
I love
Yeah.
that. Also, I mean, launching and selling out that quickly, I'm sure you were really anxious during that time because how could you not be? It's like watching your baby take a breath, and you're like, oh my God. Did you, having the experience that you've had working in, the creative space, did you kind of rally for PR? I think pre-order is actually a really interesting concept. And if you're open to talking about it, I think that, when you're building hype for a brand, but it's for something completely new, what are kind of the standards that you would approach if somebody's like, okay, I want to do a product drop, I want to do a
Yep.
pre-order. How do I approach that? Because I think that is something that, comes up and a lot of folks are like, ah, and it's not just for hype, right? It is also for planning. But can you talk a little bit about your decision to do pre-order?
Yeah. Again, it was 2015. So now there's like actual playbooks and frameworks for my recommendations that are different than what I did. But
Yeah.
I think generally an allocation towards seeding, whatever tastemakers are in your network, even if they're friends, just like that early pop of UGC. The key there is to trust your gut instinct versus the feedback that might come, because it can really sway you in the early days. You kind of need to be able to get to that volume before you start like letting one person's opinion kind of change your trajectory.
Yeah.
And then, to be honest, I probably wouldn't pre-order. I would probably just start the newsletter list with some really compelling imagery with the stock ready to
Love.
ship.
Yeah.
Because I think what people really want is making sure that things get there at like Amazon expectations, and that's only increased since the days of COVID. So I just think that like
Yeah.
there's less tolerance than ever for anything to go wrong in that way. So like especially with how many people have kind of burned the bridge on like the pre-order trust, like it's just really important to like be able to have the physical proof that like you have what you need in your warehouse, and that like what people are basically ordering into or expressing interest in is available to them.
It's not a Kickstarter, you know?
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
not a
like,
Kickstarter,
I
but if
mean,
you
yeah.
wanted a Kickstarter, like go do a Kickstarter, you know? But if you're going to put
Right.
your domain
Definitely.
name live, then it's just like what does that really mean to you, and what's your obligation there? But those are your earliest supporters.
Right, your earliest supporters, and also there's a concept. I don't know if you've heard of the concept of 1,000 true fans. It's like if you have 1,000 people who like really fuck with you, they ride with you, they are like, I got you. They're buying what you're selling, they're into it. That's enough to sustain like a kind of growth cycle of you growing up through. So kind of activating your 1,000 true fans of like, who are the people who are going to be, is it 100 and then it's 200 true fans, and can we get to 1,000, and then kind of building that momentum, but
Yeah,
really getting people to that sustainable standpoint. It's not a small feat. And, one thing that I thought was so interesting when I was asking you to be on the show is that you were entirely self funded to start. And that in itself is, that's a huge task. So there's a lot of risk involved. And
yeah.
I'd be remiss not to ask you, who supports you like when you're taking these big risks you're making. Allison calls them money moves, but like I also think they're big bold steps, and they're ones that like are new when you're doing something new.
Yeah.
Who's supporting you in those moments?
Um, my friends, I had a lot of really great mentors. One now who's on my board, but I always tell this story. Like when I was freelancing at 360i, and she was basically like recruiting me to lead Clinique. And I would have been working with
Hmm.
one of my best girlfriends as my like CD, and then her as ECD or whatever her title was above her. And then my partner was one of my best friends. It was like a dream job if I didn't have this thing that I needed to go launch. And that gig crossed over to like when I was actually ready to go shoot. And I'll never forget it because she was basically like, you need to go do this now. And I just want you to know that no matter where I am, you'll always have a job with me. And I was just like,
Mm.
huh, like the security in that, even just emotionally, to know that it wasn't just my freelancer reputation, but that like literally this woman who I knew had more can lions than she had shelf space, was like saying that no matter where I went, if this didn't work out, that I would be okay with her, or that I could always
Mm.
call.
Yeah.
And now almost 9 years later, she's on my board, and like we're working on the future of the brand together. And it's like a really powerful, different, very interesting dynamic. But there's that, there's
Yeah.
my husband, there's, my girlfriends, I think, but really a lot of that support and that like consistent, okay, I'm going to go do this, is because of the response from the world. Like the press was
Yeah.
immediate. Fast Company picked it up the day after the site went live. I think before that we had Not Caught. You remember Not Caught? Is Not Caught still
Hmm.
around?
Yeah.
Um,
I was like, I don't think it's still around. Yeah.
yeah, but like Not Caught had posted something. Someone posted it on Not Caught, and then Ad Week was like right after Fast Company. But we got Vogue, Allure, Entertainment Tonight, uh, Fast Co. Inc., Glamour, Cosmo, like anything that you could imagine, we got in the first 4 months. And a lot of those were over indexed over the next 4 months, but were in the
Yeah.
first 4 days, 4 weeks. It was like love for like the nuances of like the thickness of the band and how sticky the grip is. Like people write in and they're like, how did you get the gripper to be the perfect amount of stickiness? And we're like, we chose
Yeah.
it based off of gut instinct. We're so glad that you like it like that, but it's not
Yeah.
like I was zoning in with the supplier being like, I need this amount of stickiness. It was like, there's nuances like that around all of the other aspects of the invention, but like,
Yes.
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's a really interesting time in my life to be having this conversation because it's so reflective, but like, but it's true. Like, we made something that actually really matters in the world. And I think like all products should do that, otherwise it's just waste.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck are you doing this for if it doesn't matter? And I think like the other thing I love is that I mean, I grew up in the suburbs. I love a fucking mall. And you talked about being in malls. You talked about, hey, if there's one thing I know about this product, it sells no matter where I put it. But that you had yes, you had like one of those mall like island carts that was completely beautifully branded with shower cap and that they're selling all over the place. So when you set out, I think you spoke a little bit about this earlier in our conversation, but you said, around like you wanted something cool and actually aesthetically beautiful, but the clientele has expanded way beyond like the people who are, I'll say like us or like people who are like driven by like these specific things, so appealing to different clienteles, I mean, switching up patterns, things like that, how much of that plays into like wanting to appeal to like, Kathy in St. Louis is going to be different than like somebody who lives in like Tribeca, right? So I think like understanding your clientele, how has that shifted since launching the brand 9 years ago?
I think originally, it's a great question. Originally, I set out to create a cool shower cap. I used to say in
Yeah.
development, I'm going to make the shower cap cool. And everyone would be like, cool, how? Like it
Yeah.
was so foreign of a concept, but that was my goal, was to reposition how people thought about the category, right? I think our
Yeah.
launch did that pretty immediately. Like the way that we shot
Yeah.
it did that pretty immediately. Even what the logo looks like, the packaging, box checked, right? And our
Hmm.
earliest retailers validated that with Violet Gray was one of our first ever,
That's where
and
I
Blue
bought mine.
nice. You have great taste. Um, and Bloomingdale's was right after. So it became a really interesting kind of analysis of like, it's not just the violet gray and the net girly, and
Hmm.
our ecom has sold in every state in the US, even as a bootstrap brand since 2016, meaning we had coverage in Missouri, like
Hmm.
over and over and over again when we were working with pennies. So that
Yeah.
to me, like, really, really, really identified that this has always been a mass appeal play. I think that's because we created something that every woman wanted and every woman needed, right? And now
Yes.
we're expanding even further from there because guys are washing their hair less than ever. So like
Yes.
guys are being educated by like head and shoulder content, or I don't know, like their barbers, that overwashing creates more friction, increases hair loss, right? Like prematurely, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sorry if I'm in
Every
the shadow.
man's nightmare.
But they're being educated. So we as a brand don't need to educate them. So now we have guys, not just the dreadlocks guys that have always been my customer base, but like the average dude, that doesn't
Yeah.
have protective styles and doesn't have a ton of hair, is just like so scared to lose it. And we come up as an opportunity. But I think, where it really plays out is tone. Like one of the earliest
Hmm.
things that I got kind of confronted by in the proof that we weren't just this feminist cool kid like D2C brand was because there was a school shooting and I posted something anti-gun and my comments lit up, like basically shower cap, how dare you, like I'm from Texas and
Mm.
X, right? And my PR team at the time, I won't name them, but they get a lot of credit for this, was like, I was like, WTF, like what am I supposed to do? Just not put my political opinions there? And they were just like, well, you have a mass appeal brand. Not everyone does, right? If there's an incumbent going after Tampax or Trojan, right? That's this D2C player, then you can assume that they lean feminist, right? Because
Hmm.
that's how they're getting the chomp out of the market share. They're attacking the pink tax against razors. They're, coming at it from a sexual empowerment place versus Trojan selling to guys, right? Or whatever. And for us, we really needed to define what the parameters around our advocacy looked like, knowing that we had a more mass appeal brand, because our brand didn't play that way. We created something new in market, created a new opportunity. There is no incumbent, right? And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, it wasn't just our feminist narrative that was selling our product. It wasn't just the brand and our principles that was selling the product. So the way that we defined it is like, if it's kind of like a female issue, a woman's issue, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
it's fair game. Like, that's where our
Yeah.
opinions lie. Anything outside of that, we try to stay nonpartisan. Like, is it something that I'm super happy about? No, but do I need to
Yeah.
respect my customer base and know that, like, even though I'm not a Trump supporter, like, there's a lot of people that are, you know, and like they buy shower
Yeah.
caps every day, and some of them are our highest supporters. So it's just like, I kind of need to please everyone, and that means not polarizing anyone, you know? I'm
Yeah. I
polarized.
think there's also something to be, and I mean I get it. I think there's also something to be said about like, it's kind of knowing your category, like you said. I mean, if you have a podcast about sex and relationships, like you don't have to like make a statement about Gaza in every single episode. You could at one point leave an opinion, but like it's very polarizing. And I've actually seen people going in and comment sections for like various, like, people who have like a show or a brand and they want them to make a statement, but it's like we shouldn't all be forced to make a statement on something. It's like, why force someone if they may or they may not have an opinion, and like that's on them, like they should work on that, right? But they
Yeah,
probably do, and like why force them to talk about it when they're not really trained to talk about it in that way? I mean, like, if I'm really not qualified to make statements on war. I don't really know that much about it. I mean, I know what I know. I have my own opinions, but I'm not qualified. So like why should
right.
I be asked to comment on that? And I think that it's really interesting. I think it's smart advice from your PR firm, but also probably tough, when you are fiercely independent, you are like you have that fire. I can feel it. Like I love that. And I think
Double
that
Aries.
it's oh my God. Yeah. Like, yeah, I'm surprised there isn't a
Aries,
fire right
Aries,
next to you right
Aquarius.
now.
It's like the only thing keeping me chill.
I mean, listen, I'm a Libra with a rising Pisces, but the thing that keeps me tied down is I'm a Taurus moon. We just keep it breezy. We keep it
Yeah, yeah,
even.
yeah.
Um, but I think it's hard not to fly off and say, "Oh, I feel this." I mean, and I'm constantly with that with HR, with like partnering with my clients, people that I coach that are executives. It's not really up to me to have an opinion. Like people always want to know like how I feel about return to office. It's like honestly, like I'm neutral, not because I don't have an opinion, but because I can see benefits on both sides. Such a Libra thing. But I can see, both sides of it being having benefits, having downsides. And so
Yeah,
I try to like hear everyone out. I try to hold my own opinion as much as possible from the conversation. And then having people who are like my personal board of directors, my husband, my friends that I can like really unleash to, that's really helpful because I don't need everyone to hear every opinion that I have. It's totally okay.
yeah, no, totally. And I think yeah, I mean, all of that said is like we all have a responsibility now because we all have a platform, right? Like
Yes.
even my friends that are teachers on Long Island, like they still have a platform, and
Yes.
their students can still find them on the internet. And like that's such a shift from any decades prior that now that's commonplace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it
Yeah.
doesn't always mean that we need to be vocal about every topic that flies in our purview, but it does mean that we should be having the right conversations behind closed doors and be advocates in our own
Absolutely.
right, in our own way, on our own personal channels. And like how that intersects with business, like I'm still trying to figure out just given the nature of my customer base. But I think in
Yeah.
general, like showing up and doing the work is really important.
Yeah, and I think when your name is, you have a separate company name, then, the brand is not your name, but your name is so tied with the brand. So, a quick Google of only your name is going to pull up the brand and vice versa. So there is going to always naturally be that Venn diagram that overlaps and it is hard. I mean, speaking of the comment section, I mean, I think it's interesting because social can have so much influence on how we kind of see our own brand, how we see our own work, and, things like dupes and intellectual property and your customers are so diehard, right? And they're seeing things and they're calling it out, right? And I think that how do you kind of balance participating? Do you participate as a brand in the comment section? Do you try to withhold? Do you respond to it, or do you try to just like let them speak amongst themselves and sort of stay above it? Because I think that it's a challenge for a lot of business owners to kind of decide when. I don't know if you've seen, there's like the Free People micro shorts comment section, which is, maybe it's just like an elder millennial like heyday right now, but it's like the comment
Tell
section
me,
is probably the funniest thing I've ever seen.
please sell
Yeah.
there. Please tell me.
I mean, yes. Well, these are shorts. These are shorts that are essentially, somebody called them chaps for my flaps, and that's where I'll leave that, and you can look that up on your own. But yeah,
Got
so
it.
like, when do you
Got it.
choose to participate, and when do you not?
I think when it comes to dupes, counterfeits, and intellectual property as a whole, my own personal channel is where I'm having those conversations. I think me as a thought leader, having the experiences that I've had, having a multi-million-dollar 7 patent deep global portfolio on something that was defined, like,
Yeah, I was like,
um,
can we take a pause for that? Just like drop the mic real quick. Like, hello.
yeah, I mean, while there's actively competitors that are literally trying to dismantle those assets and those rights based off of legal loopholes and bullshit, like, yeah, it's a really important story for me to tell, but I don't think that I should muddy the waters with that on my brand page. You know, I
Yeah.
think as far as the brand, like, we win by winning, and the truth will come out and everyone can see the side by sides. And like, the way that we look at the Amazon landscape, which is kind of what we call it because they're complicit,
Mm.
um, the Amazon landscape is selling a whole bunch of things that miss the plot. No one needed a $12 shitty fucking shower cap out of a cheap material. If they did, I would have not had an entry point to market. So I
Yeah.
think that, like, what we built is a brand that pulses and lives and stands for something and people care about, right? What we created and what we sell is a product that people love, that they don't want to replace, that they'll buy 3 of, that they'll put their friends on too. And I think what the knockoffs do is sell some pleated shower caps in the best way that they can legally try to get away with it. And that's not what this category needed. So like, we'll
Mm.
always continue to be able to rise above when that's the way that the others are playing, you know?
Yeah. I think that's so, I mean, it's so spot on. And as someone who, like, I love fashion, I pay attention to aesthetics. I can always see when someone just went into the store and they were like, I'll take the mannequin versus having, like, an idea of
That's
like what
that's
style
exactly what
is.
it is. It's like having style, right? Like, that's a great analogy. Like, understanding brand building at the head of an organization, right? That's the
Hmm.
exact analogy. Like, when you have founders like Jen from Away, or not
Hmm.
to name another Jen, but like Jen of Kin, right? Like, people who are actually creating things and doing new things in the world, or like Eva from Maud, right?
Hmm.
Like, all of them are brand builders. They understand brand and you can see it everywhere. And it's the difference between having style or going shopping and having a personal shopper shop for you. Like, you can
Yeah.
tell when the clothes are wearing you versus you putting an outfit together yourself. And brand is literally everywhere. Like, I always tell the girls this, like, brand is down to not just the hats, right? Like, there's a reason there's not a screaming shower cap logo on my hat for our merch, and that it's just a drip. Like, because it's
Yeah.
cooler, right? And like, I think our knockoffs would put a big, huge logo on their hat. You
Right.
know? Does that make
100%,
sense?
because they don't get it. Of course it makes sense. They don't get the thing. Also, I mean, I see the drip on the drip, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta, like, yeah, you gotta play with it a little. I think it's
Yeah.
like also thinking about, I love that you just named other, women who are also founders and inventors and thinking about their categories. I mean, you had a pretty cool post about International Women's Day. I like that you were late, because that's also like, if you're a woman that is doing things, you are booked and busy, and we're not on time. It also brought up my International Women's Day terrible, like, hilarious memory was like, I had this like horrible boyfriend back in the day, and like he was just being such a complete shit. And then I kicked him out. He wasn't able to stay at the apartment. I mean, he was a real bad dude. And then I get a text on March 8th and it's like, Happy International Women's Day, babe. Just want to let you know that you're doing really great things in the world. You should be so proud. And I was like,
Oh,
this motherfucker. We broke up that
what a
day. I
loser.
was like, there's
What a loser.
nothing. What a loser.
What a
But
loser.
I love that. What a loser. I had to share that because it's like, and I always say, Happy International Women's Day, babe.
Oh,
But I love, like, you know, that you called out, like, I love being a woman. I love women. Like, and I think also being in an industry where you're saying, hey, our clients aren't only women. Like, we have a lot of people who are buying shower caps. It's not a, you know, sex specific thing. But I think
yeah.
that you talk about being surrounded by the patriarchy. And I wanted to talk about that because I think that when you are I'm very anti boss bitch, girl boss, like that
Yeah.
thing of like, it has to just be me and it's us and it's and fuck all men. But I think finding the right people to support you. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? I mean, I know you recently hired a man as your CFO. Oh my God.
Well, he's
I'd
incoming.
love to
He's incoming, just to clarify.
incoming.
He's been
Okay.
he's been on my board for 2 years, where we've developed a
Okay.
really close relationship and like working in
Yeah.
that capacity of like effectively consulting COO with me one on one, and like that's how our relationship was born. And now he's stepping in. So
Yes.
very, very grateful. But I think he's a perfect example, right? Like I can show up as my full self in front of him. I can be the boldest, most aggressive version, right? And he can still say something to me respectfully that'll calm me down or call me out of my shit, right?
Mm.
I tend, and that's our relationship, right? It's transparent, it's direct, it's clear.
Yeah.
We have great communication. Like I'm very, very fortunate that a man like that has co-signed. And like the reason why it's so important is because truly we should run like a Bombas case study on this product. Do you know what I mean?
I love that. Yeah.
And it always was perceived as small from the outside, but not because of what I did or its velocity or the cult love or the traction, but truly fundamentally in the same archetype as like when Lola was fundraising, they needed to literally dip those tampons in water and explain how they expanded because VC dudes didn't understand how tampons worked, right?
Oh my God. Yeah.
So like that story is similar to ours. Like I literally needed to at one point unlock pages in the deck by realizing that a man played back to me how and I'm like losing the plot a little bit, but I'll get there, I promise. Like a man played back to me effectively, oh, so every shower cap that you've sold validates your insight that 90% of women don't wash their hair every day. And I was like, wait, oh my God, we need to start there. Like we need to start at the fact that women don't wash their hair every day and this product protects your hair from the shower water. Like that's where we're starting. And that was years ago from someone that was smart enough. It was literally an actual brand strategist. Mm-hmm. So smart enough that it was shocking that that was a light bulb moment for them. Offensive enough that they like mansplained my own brand insight back to me. But then such an unlock to say the hundreds of thousands of these that I've made and distributed across the world that are in use daily, like cult obsessed in use, are in households on heads where it validates the behavior of not washing their hair every day. And what gets really interesting about that is that families and friends then start to have the word of mouth with the similar hair, right? But it's like,
yes,
I think men have always respected my hustle. And I think men have always respected the way I navigate things and how strong I am and how like inherently kind of female I am, but also how I can play with the boys. And what I've really felt is that, especially through COVID, when I needed to kind of boss up and be a little bit rougher around the edges and like throw my weight around and like be like, yeah, I have red lipstick, but that's also because it's blood, like that kind of thing.
From everyone
like,
you chewed up and spit out. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like I can be kind of a ball buster and like heading into my 40s, like whether it's in my marriage or like in my interpersonal dynamics or with my junior employees, like I'm recalibrating on that, you know? But what I know that I don't want to have to do is soften myself in the C-level conversations and
Yeah.
with that level of like business that I have to do. Like I'm learning to soften it when I kind of reach down and nurture and mentor and all of those things. It's like you can't just drive people to achieve. Like that's not what a good boss or a good culture is. But
Yeah.
I do think that like in the context of like the things that I need to deal with, protecting literally global distribution on a multi-million-dollar patent portfolio, it's nice to have an old white guy pick up the phone. Like
Yeah.
it just is.
1,000%.
It behaves
Yeah.
differently. It behaves differently when there's a Rob on the back end of the phone versus a Nancy. It just does. And I've seen it in so many different ways. And most notably, what I notice, and this is as much of a fault of us as women as it is kind of the society that effectively births this type of competition. But I have had more infighting, me personally and with the team, when it's woman on woman. I think men and women respect each other's lanes in business and like have a healthier sense of like how they're expected to communicate with each other and a healthier respect when there's a miscommunication. Whereas I think often women expect to be understood by other women. And therefore, when they're not, or when they don't get their way, or their point isn't landing, it creates a different type of unrest or frustration or drama. And like, I don't know. That's all I'm saying. I feel like I shouldn't talk about it anymore. But
No.
like
I think
boys
it's a
and
good thing. And
men
we want to
around,
be seen. Yeah.
yeah. And I want to be
Yeah.
seen
Like
too. Everyone does, you know?
exactly. Everyone
But it's what
does.
happens when you're not seen, you know, is the
Right.
difference.
And how do you react to that? And I think like, you know, I've been told I'm a lot or whatever. You're a lot. You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we know what that means. Like, yeah, I'm sure you've never been told that either, right? And like I actually love that. I hold that to be like something that is one of my hallmarks. And I also know that means I'm not for everybody. And so, you know,
Who
conflict with a
is that?
neighbor. Yeah, conflict with a neighbor though, like sending my Bay Area native husband out to like maybe be a little smug, but probably be a lot nicer than my Boston ass. Like that's what you want. Okay. You don't want me to come across the street and tell you to move your car. You want him. Trust me. You know, so
Yeah.
it's like knowing my moments of like, I don't actually need to do this has been like something for me, like as I move like into my 40s is like protecting my energy, protecting like, you know, and that's very like LA of me to say, but I do think it's like whatever I put my weight behind is going to happen. Like I know
Yeah.
that power is within me. So why don't I just pick and choose what I'm doing?
And that's the thing though. Even knowing that is so intimidating for a lot of women. Like,
Oh,
I hate to
yes.
say it like that. Like, we talk about how strong women intimidate men all of the time. I have to be honest, I get so much respect for being a strong woman with men. Where I
Yes.
find I'm the most intimidating is not with men with egos, it's with women with egos.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like there's not enough space in the room for multiple egos. Where I'm actually like the more the merrier. Can you bring your ego over and we can have a
Yeah,
little bit of a party and like talk
ego
about how great we
party,
are? Because like it's good, an ego party. Men do that all the time, I am sure. But I think that, you
other
know, I think it
parties.
is really it's really important. And also in advertising, you know, there weren't a lot of women who were like hyping me and supporting me. I do think there was like kind of this, you know, conflict of like, you know, oh, well, you're kind of ruling up on me. So now I need to act like I don't like you. And there was a lot of that. And moving out of advertising and now into my own spaces, I coach so many women. And 9 times out of 10, these executives are saying, like, I'm having a really hard time like creating space for other women because I came up this way. And I'm kind of, you know, talk about intergenerational trauma. Well, in the workplace, it goes, hey, I had to really grind coming up. So now you're going to have to go through the same shit. And so kind of
Right.
unlearning those behaviors is huge. It's something that like a lot of people need to spend more time with. Honestly, I don't really hear that from men. I really don't. They have a lot of other problems that I coach them on, but
Yeah,
that is not the one, you know?
of
Yeah. I
course.
think that's interesting.
And everyone's
For
different.
you, you know, everyone's different, right? And I was going to say, and as you've like hired and grown people on your teams, you know, what have you learned about yourself as a leader in that way? Because yes, you were managing people and clients and expectations when you were working
You
in
really want to know?
advertising.
You really
Fuck
want
yeah,
to
I want
know?
to know. Tell me.
I like don't even want to say this publicly, but fuck it, I have to. I used to fight. We have a people ops advisor. We have an incredible board. Like, talk about who supports me. Like, once we really got humming, like, our board is rock star. And honestly, Andrew is one of the latest to join, right? So like our relationship is closest and he's coming in, but like one of the reasons why he joined is because who he's joining is just excellent. So one of our people ops advisors, like, we've been fighting this for years, and I'm just like, I don't like it. Like, I don't like it. I don't know if I have time in my schedule. I don't like it. I don't know that it's the type of founder that I want to be, also being in the weeds on like day-to-day people management. And we would fight about the fact that like I couldn't have a people manager until we were over a certain headcount, right?
Mm-hmm.
And recently what I've started doing is just making sure that the women that I'm hiring at an executive level have excellent managerial skills. And also the expectation is set in their relationships that they're not just championing their own teams that are working underneath them, but they're championing the teams that are the entirety of the Shhhowercap team. Like, the expectation is that if they had a rough day or someone had a rough day and it's not on their, for whatever reason, it doesn't have to do with the business, but like, say they had a boyfriend, right, issue. I don't have room for that. Like, if you cry to me about your boyfriend breaking up with you at like the age of 25, like, it's just not something I have space in my CEO schedule for. Does that make me an awful boss? No, I have to run the company, but like having people in place that can be that and then play it back to me so that I can be like, hey, I heard you had a tough day yesterday. Like, do you want to go for a coffee with me? That's my role, right? Not listening to the tears. So like, I've just started like pushing and putting my like executive people and hiring them for the soft skills and making sure that they have the bandwidth and they have the opportunity. But like, the way that we joke about it is like, they have to be the mom so that I can be the queen.
I mean, I actually love that. I think that also knowing what you're good at, like that, you just defined it so perfectly. Like, this is something like I tell people in HR all the time. It's like, you don't have to be, there's management, there's leadership, and there's mentorship. You might not be in it for people management, and that is totally fine.
I'm a leader and I'm a mentor, but I'm not the day-to-day. Like, don't tell me when your vacation is. Don't expect me to remember. Like, that part of things needs someone in order to be successful, because I'm like the visionary cheerleader champion and then also the mentor, you know?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's that
And
middle
also
piece,
just
like
knowing,
admin.
well, it's admin, but it's also just not something you enjoy. And when, delegation is one of the biggest things that holds founders back, is that their inability to delegate, their inability to pull themselves up out of the weeds and say, okay, I got to rise up, I got to do this, and I got to move past what you just shared with me. Hey, I'm sorry about the breakup, but like, I've got 7 meetings and a pitch today. So like, what are we doing? So I think knowing that part, delegating, and then there's someone on your team, or you're hiring people on your team who want to do that. They're like, that's my jam. I'm so good at it. You're like, perfect. Please take that and run. I mean, yes, that's huge. I mean, what, on that note, when it comes to people teams, or just, in general, I mean, what is one idea? There's a million. What's one idea you think majority of people get wrong about launching a brand?
Huh.
Your expression said everything.
I'm sorry, that felt like such a boomerang. I thought you were going to ask me about people.
Nope.
One life hack, though, if you do have like one professional life hack, Emmett Shine told me this, that you can't be a good creative director and also be a good people manager.
That's right.
Because your job is to crit, and being a visionary founder is not to crit. They're like fundamentally at odds. So what he passed along to me is something I've tried to incorporate, which is I just have weekly walks where I rotate with everyone, so everybody always gets FaceTime. And that's been the easiest way, because for me, it's always locked, right? My assistants know not to book over it. I never book over it, but I'll always have space for people. And like, just passing that along, however it could be helpful. How people get wrong launching a brand. Okay.
And it could be on the people side too. The reason I asked in that order is I think that there is, like, when you're hiring people teams, you are growing your brand. I think there's a lot of gaps that people miss, which is why I wanted to ask you here.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't understand what brands are when they pay and inherit them, which we kind of touched on earlier. I don't know if you're going to keep it in.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just as much of an importance in understanding skill and like what's needed in business as it is to like read a P&L, you know?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people stress about the things that like their parents tell them that they need to know before they go into business, but not what really moves the needle on like, it doesn't even need to be a category defining product, let alone just a successful brand entry, right? Like you need to know how to do something differently or do something better. You need to know how to create a world in a physical space from a brand book that was about packaging. You know, like
Yeah.
and those
I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Check,
it's
check,
a
check.
holistic skill set of an entire side of the world that a lot of people don't understand, right? They just know it when it's wrong, right? And then that becomes really, really, really frustrating for founders that have a clear vision but don't know how to articulate it.
Yeah.
The other is, I think this was very, this came very naturally to me, and maybe it's just the types of founders that I respect and gravitate towards. But like my most successful founder friends can sell, can sell. They can sell to anyone for any reason, for anything. And they have a way of making it so that you didn't even know that you were being pitched to. And if you were being pitched to, you actually liked it, you know? Like
I like that.
it's just selling is not something that you can outsource. Brands is not something that you can outsource because you are literally selling for 24 hours a day or 12 or 14 or 16, depending on how you work.
Yeah.
You're selling in your off periods. You're selling at the wedding when someone asks what you do, you know, you're selling day in and day out. It's not just a salesperson and a rep on the street. And the same thing for brands, you know, you're brand building every single day with every decision that you make. You're either brand building or brand crushing.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I also just, I'm enjoying this conversation like to the max. I feel like there's so much wisdom here. There's so much to take from it. Knowing we don't have all day, I'd love to just like, I want to go on a walk with you. Um, just a couple questions in closing. Where can people go to learn more about you? Where can they go to learn about the brand? Where can they buy? What's your favorite pattern of shower cap? Tell us everything.
They're all my babies.
I
The
know.
Kent is definitely my favorite. It's the only one that we've had. We change our collections. We call them collections.
Yeah.
We use a lot of fashion vernacular, which you will see if you go to shop on shhhowercap.com. It's shhhowercap.com. That's also the Instagram handle. And you can also support us at some of our incredible retailers, Revolve, 13 Loon, Violet Grey. Who else am I forgetting that I shouldn't? Anthropology, although they have some other turban shower caps. Just make sure that you buy the original. And Saks. But I also think that like generally the Kent is my favorite because it was the first printed prototype. That question that you asked me of like which one was in my hands, like that was the first one. And every time can you see it actually? Let's see.
Show me.
Hold on, let's see. Sorry, you can edit this out. But it's 217. It's my angel number. We have to end on 217.
Oh.
But like this is the Kent pattern, and I literally like how people have like motivating quotes on the back of their phone. I changed it to the Kent pattern in COVID, and I never changed it back because it really is my why. It like reminds me
your
of
picture
those
of your baby on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also like I get up every day and I do it for that print, for that feeling, for that excitement, for that memory, like the silhouette is incredible, but like that print hits me in like the deepest part of my souls. And that's why it's like the only one that we still have from 2015. I'll never get rid of it. Even if it's like a soft sale season. I'm like, nope.
So fucking
People
cool.
want it.
I love
it looks
that.
like
I mean, it's so beautiful. I haven't bought that one, and I'm like, I think I need a third. Um, so, I mean, Jacquelyn, you've shared so much today. What is one final thought you want to leave our
Oh, and
listeners
then you
with?
can follow me. Can we get people to follow
Yeah.
me?
Oh, yeah. Please help someone follow you.
Then
Plug
you
it.
can follow me. Thanks. She's referenced a couple of my posts because I'm going like multi-paragraph hot takes these days, and it's not going to
I like
stop,
it.
which is great. My personal is DeeJayzoo, and that's the phonetic spelling of my last name, De Jesu.
Which I love. Thank
This has
you
been
so
really
much
great,
for
Lauren.
that. Oh my gosh, it's been so fun having you. Can you give our listeners that super special one final thought? I mean, they should just listen to this on repeat till they get it.
Oh, thanks. Um, like this is so cheesy, but if you dream it, you can achieve it. You know, especially if you live in a major city or you have access to one. It's really just a series of putting one foot in front of the other and starting and asking the right people when you need help and knowing when to ask for help and when you get it, knowing when to listen and knowing to when not listen, you know? And all of that just kind of really resolves in trusting your gut. So the more intuitive you can be, the more self work that you can do, the more energetic healing, the closer you'll get to zoning in on what that means for you. Because as ball buster as I am, like that's truly what paces my world is the way that synchronicities play out and the way that my intuition leads me to certain paths or certain things. And I think that like it is one of the strongest things and tools that we have as women, is the ability to do that and to ground ourselves in that and to be supported in often circles that at least one or two people will also want to play ball with you when you want to talk about astrology and things that matter like energetic healing. So just find your gut and listen to it and have enough people around you that when your gut's saying something that needs more guidance, that you have those people to say it to you too.
I love that. I'm over here just beaming because I just feel like I'm going to have a higher vibration day from this conversation. So thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank
sharing
you.
that and just being open. And hey, ball buster aside, I think we got pretty vulnerable. I like the tension between the two. And that's like super,
Yeah,
super cool.
that's
That's
the
a modern
dichotomy
fucking
of
woman there.
yeah, no,
The
seriously.
dichotomy of Jacqueline.
That's true. That's true. It really is. It's like I'll scream as much as I'll smile. But truly, like follow if you want more of what you heard today.
I love that. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
me.
thanks
This
for
has been
having me.
so fun. Yes, you're a
This is
blast
great.
and I'm watching you. You're doing big things. So thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Don't Fuck This Up is a podcast written, produced, and edited by Lauren Alvarez. New episodes dropping every Wednesday. Be sure to follow, rate, and review this and every episode. And until next week, please keep it together and try your best not to fuck this up.